It's time for the Yacht Club Show.
Needed now more than ever.
With Killer, Rev D, and Dr. Jim.
All right, welcome back, listeners. A lot of feedback to the last show. Before we get into that, it's a great time to be a Detroit sports fan.
Yeah, it is.
Tigers came out of nowhere to get into this wild
Yeah, where did I
card.
say they were 31-11 or something?
They were
crazy.
Yeah, 55-63. I think that's when I gave up on them. That was a couple months ago. And down to one of the wild card teams. Fantastic. Go Tigers. Bless you, boys.
Boy, there's some nostalgia there. That's
They're messing with us, man.
yeah.
I don't know. Tarek Skubal just wrapped up the, I guess they call it the Triple Crown for pitching. Highest number of victories, lowest ERA, and most strikeouts.
Really?
Starting pitcher, yeah.
So he's got to be a Cy Young.
Shoe-in for this
Is he
guy.
Cy Shoe-in?
And how about those Lions? They play the Seattle Seahawks tonight at Monday Night Football, a team that's given them lots of trouble. We'll see. We'll see what they're made of.
What are you thinking?
I think the Lions should win. I think they're going to win handily. Well,
Anyway,
it's still early. Still early in the season. We're looking for signs.
I'm going to enjoy it while I can.
Well, Jim, I understand, based on feedback from the last show, some of it favorable, some of it not so favorable. You have some thoughts you'd like to share with our listeners.
Yeah, I think obviously the favorable people are, they are so wise and brilliant that I need say no more. I'm not worthy to say anything about them. Those who are critical of us, I think, first of all, thank you, because it shows you're listening and
thinking.
And
or not thinking.
No. They're thinking. They're not necessarily thinking, the same as we do, but that's okay. We're just a bunch of jokers out here expressing our opinion, and it's like all opinions. It's got a bias to it, and that's what we have to we try to acknowledge. The thing I will say, if you're going to disagree with us, we would love it if you would tell us specifically what it is you disagree on, and not just that you don't like it or that we're being unfair. We'd love it if you could be explicit and tell us how we're being unfair. There's a couple of kinds of comments we get when we say something about, in this particular, let's just take for an example, Vice President Harris running for president, and we make a comment about her, the answer is not whataboutism, but what about Trump? The answer is where are we wrong when we say this, something about her? Please, we encourage you to be critical, but if you've given it enough time and enough thought to think that we're wrong, tell us why we're wrong, other than you disagree with us, and that'd be great. And we'll try to address it the next time we get on the air.
And how do you do that? You can email us at yachtclubshow, all one word, at gmail.com. Again, yachtclubshow@gmail.com. We would love to get feedback from our listeners. Based on WordPress analytics, we're reaching a fair amount of people, and we don't know where you're all from. So if you'd like to drop us an email just to let us know, what part of the country or maybe what part of the world you're from, that would be helpful. We'd like to know who we're reaching. Again, yachtclubshow@gmail.com. Thanks, Dr. Jim. Anything else?
Yeah, well, that's what you just said is important, because we have to realize how far we have to expand our opinions. I mean, if you're calling from Utah, we got to give opinions about Utah.
Well,
mindless, off the cuff opinions about Utah.
Well, you've
Just
come to
what
the
you need.
you've come to the right place for it, though,
Yes,
right?
Yeah.
And you could be from Thailand for all we know. When you look at Killer's,
I don't know if we have many opinions about Thailand.
oh, we could come up with something.
We will.
Yeah.
We will.
That's right. So if you're from Utah, we'll be glad to share everything we know about
Hey.
Utah.
Anyway, that's it.
Got it. Well, before we get further into the show, man, I'm a little parched.
Oh, Killer. I'm sorry. I did bring something for
Dave
you,
brought
Dr.
beer and he's
Jim.
been sitting on it.
Well,
this whole time.
I just hadn't thought about it. Here, I got something in the season. I got an October, a mass-produced Oktoberfest for you and Dr. Jim.
Sam Adams.
Sam Adams,
how bad
yeah.
can it be, right?
Well, and for it's free, and
That
I
makes it
know
even better.
I've known you guys long enough to know that free,
Carries a lot of weight.
it carries a lot of weight
Yeah, it
with
does, yeah.
you. We've been out there, and they said, "Oh man, that's a fermented rat urine. That's terrible, but it's free." Oh, we'll try some. We'll try some. Is it cold?
Can really sway us.
I gotta have it cold.
So I'm gonna enjoy a Vandermill artisanal hard cider, Honey Crisp, while we're in the season.
Vandermill Honeycrisp. Interesting. Have you had it yet?
I've not. This is
Okay, well,
maiden voyage here.
Yeah, so we'll have to get. I've had Sam Adams Oktoberfest. I like it. I've always liked anything from Sam Adams. They set the bar for microbrew. Yes. All right. Well, we chatted about this briefly before we started recording this afternoon. Dr. Jim sent me sent us an email, and I'm on Andrew Sullivan's email list. And for those of you that aren't familiar with Andrew Sullivan, he's a British-American author, editor, and blogger. He's formerly the editor of The New Republic, which I think is a liberal publication. But at some point, I think some of his views change, and he identifies more as a conservative now. In fact, someone last few years described him as liberal, and he kind of took offense to that. He said, "I'm conservative," but it's interesting to note too that he is a gay man and Catholic, which that's an interesting combination these days. So I think socially he's liberal, but I think as far as just common core elements of government and how intrusive the government should be, I think he's more conservative, maybe libertarian. But very interesting guy. He was on 60 Minutes several years ago. Maybe it's on YouTube. It's worth checking out. Very, very deep thinker. Anything you want to add, Jim, to his background?
He's just open to other opinions as well. Almost all of his podcasts include interviews with people who you'd not put him in the conservative camp. Recently, he had James Carville. He did an interview with him for about an hour and a half.
So he has some cachet.
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
And people, even with a Democrat or a liberal bent, respect him enough to be on his podcast.
Yeah.
And so it's if you want to be exposed to different points of view, whether you are conservative or liberal, he's someone you might want to consider listening to.
I read him because I tend to agree with so much of what he says or share the same viewpoint. But anyway, this email that Jim sent me is one of his columns, recent columns. It's titled "Harris for President: An Anguished but Emphatic Endorsement." And the article is very, very interesting. I'm going to go through the main points and let the guys comment along the way. He opens the article with this statement: "Looking back over the many presidential elections I've now witnessed in my life, I don't think I've ever been as heartsick about the choice as this year. We have to choose between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, the venal or the vacuous, the awful or the empty, the malignant or the mediocre." And like me, I'm sure the guys here, He says, I've tried and tried to be impressed by the Harris campaign so far, as have a handful of genuinely conflicted voters, I think more than a handful, and remain distinctly underwhelmed. Even in sycophantic interviews, Harris cannot answer a direct question, lurches from canned phrases to pureed pablum, offers policies that seem oddly estranged from our current discontents, and keeps her distance from any truly spontaneous or lively interaction. I don't care what side you're on. I don't think anyone can really disagree with that.
Well, it is a long time ago, I guess, before even the primary began. I guess the common refrain I would hear from people is that Biden is the only Democrat that Trump can beat, and Trump is the only Republican that Biden can beat. I think the Democrats have succeeded in coming up with a second one that Trump may beat.
We'll see. I don't know.
You're going to get letters on this one.
Yeah,
I know.
It's tight. It's tight.
He just goes on to describe Harris. It's interesting that, in her 2020 presidential campaign, how she attacked Biden from the left on race. She became vice president only after Biden explicitly ruled out any men from his search and the implicity any white women, undercutting his Veep's credentials from the get-go. So if you think about it, conscious decision, I'm not going to choose a male.
Right.
I'm not going to choose a white female.
Right.
So now your pool for the second most important position in the country, maybe the world, because if president falls ill or whatever, you're in command. So the pool was 20% of our U.S. population, basically.
Well, and it's really less than that. Who else, under those parameters, who else would it have been at that time? I can't think of anybody else. Can you?
What? But the
you mean as far as choice?
A choice. If he wanted a female, black female, I'm just trying to think who else would have been around at that time. That Shirley Chisholm. I don't remember.
Right.
You're
no,
right.
you're
right, Dave.
She was,
Very shallow pool.
She comes from a very, very large liberal state, and so she's. Who would be more qualified than her? Yet would fit.
Yeah, I don't know.
Into that 20%
I can't
category.
think. I can't think of that.
There was like there was a Hispanic governor of New Mexico, I think. Was
I kind of like that Val Deming. I remember at the time.
Yes,
she was a prosecutor
in Florida, right?
Florida,
yeah.
I thought she should have been looked, and maybe she was vetted.
Well, again, is it both? We just threw out some names, but were they more or less qualified than Kamala? I don't know.
Yeah,
they would have been selected for the same reasons. The accidental
whatever candidate
characteristic she had that they had of being female and minority.
So Andrew continues here. He says she gave a terrific convention speech, and she did. She gives good speeches, and decided simply to ignore almost all her previous far left positions, and that's documented everywhere. You can find positions on defund the police, radical, sex change advocacy. Just there's a lot of stuff out there, and it's easy to find. So she decided to ignore her previous positions without explicitly renouncing them. That's a gift. Politicians have that gift. What's kind of cool is for America to have a female president at long last, and who is one has not campaigned explicitly on those identity lines, and I give her a lot of credit for that. So that's something to celebrate, that she's not going there.
Right.
So I give her a lot of credit. But you got to ask questions like, does she have what it takes to resolve the open-ended war between Russia and Ukraine? And what's her strategy for containing China's national aggression? So there's a lot of questions there. She didn't forge a path like Obama or grasp the center as he did. She rose with the machine and will not trouble the machine. But this is Andrew now. I have yet to hear her say a single interesting or memorable thing in her entire career. Have you? And I'm looking at you guys. Anything that she said that's kind of, captured your imagination?
No, I can't say.
Not off the top of my head.
I can't say I paid any attention to her. She was a California politician, and then she decided to run for the presidency, and then dropped out before she actually got into the campaign season during the primary season.
Right.
And really, I didn't think she had much to say other than when she blasted Biden for being
a racist
or something.
Something.
That was in the debate, right?
Yeah.
That's the only thing I remember is that first debate. And I think she bailed after that, wasn't she? After that,
she just didn't have the funding.
No.
Andrew goes on to say she's extremely cautious, deeply insecure, and out of her depth, which I think we said in our last show that she's certainly out of her depth. If a serious Republican candidate were up against her, even Nikki Haley, this election would not be even faintly close. This is Andrew's opinion, and probably shared by a lot. But, he goes on to say, we do not have a serious Republican candidate. And that's kind of where I want to focus, Sarah. Do you guys agree now with some of these comments that Andrew makes? I mean, and he's using a blunt force weapon in his description of Trump. We have the most shameless charlatan in American political history, even with all the competition. He is unfit in every respect to be president of the United States. Trump does not merely break norms, he has broken the norm, the indispensable norm for the continuation of the republic. The norm first set by George Washington when he retired from office. The norm that changed the entire world for the better, accepting the results of an election. This is the meaning of America, and Trump despises it. I do not think this is even within his personal control. He is so genuinely psychologically warped that he has never and never will agree to the most basic requirement of public office, that you quit when you lose, and that the system is more important than any individual in it. Before I go on, any comments?
Well, you quit when you lose?
Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking of Al Gore and Hillary. Certainly, I'm not comparing them with what Trump did, but they didn't just bow out quickly.
Right. They questioned the results of the election. I think it's important to say that everything Andrew said is right, that a politician who behaved as Trump did disqualifies himself from being president of the United States. But it is not as if he is the first one to do this. He has done it in a way that is so spectacularly
Trump,
yeah,
that it's a farce the way.
Well, I was going to. Embarrassing comes to mind.
Embarrassing, yes. It was an incompetent attempt to overthrow the election. Others, as Dave rightly pointed out, and we know, Hillary did not, they eventually, both Hillary and Gore eventually conceded the election, but that did not occur right after the election. So there is a tradition of, people who have lost the election contesting it to some degree, but nobody has done it to the degree that Trump has done it. And, it kind of reminds me of, brings me back to when Kennedy, defeated Nixon for the presidency. And I guess the rumor that was going around at the time was that Mayor Daley and Joe Kennedy conspired to
get dead people to vote in Illinois.
Get a bunch of, suspect votes in Illinois, and
I'm sure
the election
going
was
on since the first election.
Right. Mm-hmm. And Nixon, somebody offered Nixon, suggested he should contest the election, and he said, no, you just don't do that.
Yeah.
The election is over.
I can respect that.
Fight another day.
Yeah.
And then he got in, of course, and said, I'm going to get him now.
I'm just thinking, in fairness to Gore, remember at that time there was some question about the hanging chads and everything that was going on at that time. I mean, he might have had a little bit of an argument to make.
That's very, very true, and I'm sure there are probably those who would defend Trump would claim it's the same sort of thing, that there are questions about the validity of ballots. Did local officials put their thumb on the scale to make sure Trump didn't get elected? So there's going to be people out there who are always going to claim something like that.
Right.
So it does happen.
It have to happen in a significant number, though. I mean, I know there are anecdotes about some suspect ballots or kind of some shenanigans and stuff like that. But
well, you know what? When there's so much, when there's so much at stake, I'm sure there's cheating. But to your point, to the extent that it really would have changed anything, I just have a hard time thinking that.
Yeah, there wasn't any credible, meaningful result that would have come out of doing what. But then trying to get the electors to, refute state the will of their people, getting Pence to, refuse to certify.
That's the big one. Pence. Pence.
So there's plenty of credence to what Trump was doing. There was never, I don't think there's ever been anything as
egregious
as what he tried to do in the last election.
All right, so moving on here, he does say that he was not lying when he insists Trump was not lying when he insisted that he won in 2016, 2020 by massive landslides in the popular vote. He actually believes it. But anyway, unlike Harris, however, Trump has grasped.
We know
grasping.
We know his ability to grasp.
Yes, we do. Trump has grasped some core truths of our time. The premises behind our entire immigration system, especially around asylum, have evaporated. As far as illegal immigration, the legal right to asylum, that's the issue now. Once reserved for a few desperate dissidents from communism, this loophole broadened to include gang violence, domestic violence, economic hardship, now qualifies the entire world to show up at our doorstep and demand to come in. And yet the Democrats remain purposely blind. Although I guess Biden did issue an executive order that tightened the asylum rules this year, but it's 3.5 years too late. To decry all anti-immigration sentiment as racism, that's not right. I mean, to rain contempt as well as chaos on people who were born and grew up here and feel like second-class citizens in their own land, a lot of that's happened. So let's see here. I'm going to try to wrap this up so we'll get your guys' comments. So the trouble with Trump, however, is not the message. His message, and I think we've talked about this time and time again, policies, message, we agree with a lot of it.
A lot of it is merit.
It's Trump. That's the problem. This is a time for sane and responsible conservatism to pivot toward a more cohesive and integrated common culture by lowering the pace of legal immigration for a while and stopping illegal immigration entirely. We need to rescue equality of opportunity, colorblindness, and merit as core American values. But Trump makes this impossible. Again, I'm continuing to read from the article. Creepy admiration for foreign tyrants has profoundly discredited a sane and responsible retrenchment of American power. His demonization of legal and illegal immigrants delegitimizes serious arguments for stronger control of immigration. Going on, he said, now his policy of drastic broad protectionism is certain poison for American prosperity. Now, this is where I personally, myself, Mike Keller, I don't know if this is true or not. His unfunded tax cuts would further destroy American solvency. And I remember you made a point, Dave, about his tax cuts.
Well, his tax cuts and the what she's espousing as far as her economic package with the tax credits, and they're no better.
Right.
They're not going to lead to anything. So to me, that's a wash.
Yeah.
The net result of their policies are indistinguishable.
Got it.
But if people are looking at Trump's policy is somehow a better alternative to Harris's policy. It simply isn't.
Got it.
It's not worse, but
Not
it's
worse,
not.
yeah.
It's not going
Can
to
have
solve
the
the
same net
problem.
effect.
Yeah.
Well, and I think what you look, I personally think that would continue Biden's tariffs, and Biden continued Trump's tariffs basically in his administration. So I think those things are, again, it's a wash.
Something that occurred to me, and so Biden has had a history of sort of being, a career of being a centrist, right? He was a
And that's what we thought we were going to get.
right.
And he didn't start out that
Right.
way. Yeah.
So this is something Andrew did not mention, but it's in my mind. It just and I don't know that this certainly is not a suggestion that Trump would be better for us because of this. But my concern with her is that she started out as an ultra-liberal progressive. So she doesn't even have the benefit of having a history as a centrist.
Right.
And,
That scares me.
And she also, my fear is that if she were to win the presidency, she would suddenly feel free to be full progressive liberal. And people say, no, she would be a regular, she would respect the will of the people who didn't vote for her and try to incorporate that. And then I look back and I say, but I look at her choice for VP, which was, I don't even know how good, bad, or indifferent he would be as a leader or anything else like that. But he was not the choice of the establishment Democratic Party. So what that means to me is she's not going to feel necessarily impeded in implementing ultra-progressive policies if she becomes president.
So she's potentially lying just like every politician.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And like every politician, I'm not sure how self-aware she is. It's the old analogy. She found herself on third base, and she thought she hit a triple. And if she gets elected, she'll go further. She'll think she hit a home run.
Yeah.
She didn't even have to run to get to third base.
No, I know.
It's like
It was like the extra innings, and she started out on second base, right?
Biden got hit by a pitch.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. Yeah.
Biden got hit by a pitch.
She started out on second.
He went to first base, and then, she was a pinch runner.
Yeah.
He put her in because he got hit by the pitch.
There you
couldn't
go.
Run.
There you go.
And then there were the two errors by the other team, which is at least two.
That's accurate, too. Yeah.
Two errors by the other team put her on third base.
Yeah.
And then
she thinks she hit a triple.
And then she scored on a wild pitch.
It's like Little League. Wow. Oh, I had a home run, Dad.
Politics is a lot like baseball.
So it's, this is my concern is that, and I say this understanding the nature of people who go into politics. They think they are smarter than everyone else. So I have a real concern about her.
Yeah.
And I think that's well-founded. Yeah. I just, when we saw what happened with Biden, you look at her.
Feel like we got hoodwinked.
Well, he was going to be a unifier and a centrist, and we know how that went. Okay, her past. If you look at what she said in the past and her record in California, she's kind of tacking toward the middle now. But how can you
change his spots.
Yeah, can you trust that?
Yeah.
Can you trust that?
She was a hard-nosed prosecutor.
That's true, and she was middle class.
Right.
She's from a middle class upbringing.
Let me get back to this, and we'll get to the final point that Sullivan wants to make, and then I really want your thoughts on that. So he goes on to talk about Trump. He will not become a dictator. His first term showed that. Our Constitution held, even if our culture didn't. But in a second term, he will still be incapable of being other than himself, which means the rule of law will always be secondary. So Trump is not, this is, again, continuing with Andrew Sullivan, he's not just toxic for America. He's proven toxic for conservatism at a moment when we desperately need conservatism's realism, sobriety, and core instinct for order and stability. He grasped some essential truths, but others have been missed. But if a conservative future is possible, it will only emerge from rejecting and ejecting Trump and his despicable character. Rebuilding conservatism won't be easy, but President Harris will be extremely vulnerable if she pulls off a win. And he uses the UK as an example. Look at the UK. A nascent new conservatism arose only to be squandered by a single leader's flaws and failures and vanity. Back to Jim's point. Character does matter, but the new Labour government has very shallow support, and the chance for a sane, responsible move back to the center right is real. So I didn't know that. I thought UK was lost. So he's going on to say, I vote not for Harris as such, but for a conservatism that can emerge once the demon is exorcised. And exercise it we must now while we still can. So his point is, and maybe this is the best scenario, we elect Harris, maybe we have a Republican Congress or a mix there, so nothing gets done. And then, the Republican Party can regroup and maybe come up with a more pragmatic, get back to their core values, I guess.
All right, so what I heard him say is that we elect Harris, and she's so bad that the country will want a conservative.
Right. That's what he's saying is happening in the UK.
Yeah. No. Okay. Well, I mean, Santa Claus is real too.
So anyway, to sum up, one school of thought is Trump is absolutely too batshit crazy. Let's roll the dice with Harris. If she screws up in 4 years, maybe the Republicans have their act together.
One of the things that has to the effect of a competent Republican alternative will force the Democrats to have a competent
That's a good
candidate.
point, too. Might be best for both sides.
It's not going to be AOC.
Competent Republican Party will force a competent Democratic Party, and maybe
Right.
they'll get back to they'll both get back to their core values. Who knows?
Maybe. But what I just heard with all this is that Harris is not good for this.
No.
But she's not Trump.
Right.
Right.
So
That's
Trump,
what we're hearing.
Trump is maybe a little bit policy-wise, maybe a little bit better.
Right.
But he's Trump.
Exactly.
So that's what it comes down
That's
to
really
right
what
now.
it comes down to.
Yeah.
And I've gotten feedback on Facebook. Understand what you're saying, Mike, but she's not Trump.
And a perfectly valid.
Yeah.
If I'm talking to somebody and that's the reason they're going to vote for Harris, I cannot argue with them.
Yep, I know. Good discussion, guys. Jim, I know you've taken some notes here on some stuff that caught your eye, and I thought this would be a nice close to the show.
I was listening to, there's a TV show I listened to with Fareed Zakaria, and he was interviewing Tony Blair, and he's the former Prime Minister of England, and he wrote a book on leadership, and he was talking about some of the things that he thinks leaders have to be able to do or have to have some attributes they have to have. And it probably fits into our discussion, and maybe you can figure out within after what I have to say where the various candidates fit in. So one of his points was once an individual is elected to become a leader, they have to switch their approach to things. They succeeded through the election process by their communication skills. You have to switch from being a communicator to essentially being a CEO. You have to be able to get things done, and you have to be able to get input from the real world for people who are familiar with how to solve problems in the real world. And that's the secret to success from being a leader.
That's a big jump.
Big
right?
jump.
Yeah.
So one of the things that Blair suggests or says you have to do is you have to assemble a staff of people who understand the real world, and you have to avoid the default position that we seem to have fallen into of bringing in, just lifetime politicians to come in and take positions. People who have really no real-world problem-solving experience. I think we've seen that that's become the trend, or it's always been the trend, and that prevents, I think, governments from essentially being effective. That's the point, too. He was saying we're looking at democracy today, and the big challenge we have is that everybody thinks democracy is dead because it's ineffective. We look in our own country and we see a Congress that seems to be paralyzed by politics. And we look across the world and we see autocrats who can basically do anything they want. They can be as effective as they need to be, and nobody's going to challenge them. So the problem or the challenge to democracy is can you be effective at solving people's problems? And if you're not effective at solving people's problems, autocracy is going to be an attractive alternative. I think we see this in other parts of the world, and I think we're getting there ourselves today. He had another comment about populists, and populists come about when democracy fails to be effective, and it does not solve people's problems. And the populists kind of look at that and say, yeah, these guys can't solve your problems, and you should be mad, and therefore elect me. So they ride the wave of anger, but they never seem to come up with a plan to deal with the problem. It's sort of like elect me and trust me, and I'll fix it for you, and I'll do a better job than the other guys. So I guess if anybody wants to get this country or any country back on track, they need to be able to come up with answers for people's problems and not simply just talk about how the other guy is evil or they're against you or they hate you and anything else like that.
Thank you for bringing those points in, Jim. Well, gents, another lively discussion. And again, I want to remind viewers, if you have feedback,
if you have the guts,
if we ticked you off, or if you want to call us to the table on anything that we implied was factual, send us an email, yachtclubshow@gmail.com.
Yeah, and if you're gonna just don't tell us that we're wrong and that we're biased. Please be specific where we missed the mark. Otherwise
you're a troll.
Otherwise we can't. We do want to be honest brokers in terms of what we say and suggest to you, and we know that we're probably, like everyone else, have a point of view, a biased point of view, but we're not necessarily all that conscious of it. We think we're trying to be fair, and if we're not, tell us where we missed the mark.
I do think we try to be fair. Maybe to a fault. I don't know.
Fair as we see fair.
Fair as we see fair. That's
well,
right.
It's what we tell you is what we think is fair. We probably don't tell you everything that might work against us, I suppose. Like everyone else.
A lot of stuff ends up on the editing floor anyway.
Yeah, it's like
cutting room floor, yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks for a great show. And until next time.
Dave, thanks for the Oktoberfest.
Yeah, thanks for the Oktoberfest.
We'll probably have some Thanksgiving Fest next time we get there.
Nice.
I don't know what.
Nice.
Looking forward to that. See y'all later. Catch you later. Music by War on Drugs, as found on the Internet Archives, archive.org.